Love them or hate them, Slipknot is a force to be reckoned with, and they've written some incredibly iconic metal guitar riffs. Today we're going to dive into the 6 elements that make their riffs a special kind of genius. This video is sponsored by the brand new Mick Thomson signature pickups from Fishman, which I've got loaded into this guitar right here. Tunings! The vast majority of Slipknot songs are in either drop B or drop A tuning. My guitar right now is tuned to drop B, strung up with SIT strings 62 to 13. It's very important to the sound that you use one of these tunings, because otherwise it just doesn't really sound like Slipknot. You might laugh if I described Slipknot as a death metal band, but the guitar riffs tell a different story. In a death metal context, you wouldn't even blink at this riff. Right? That's from Sick on the self-titled album. The one that comes immediately after it in the same song goes like this. That could easily be a Septic Flesh riff. This is what I would call a death metal type of tonality. It uses a lot of chromaticism, which just means using notes that are unrelated to each other key-wise, a lot of diminished scale types of sounds, and some really evil-sounding dissonance. If you don't know any music theory, that's completely fine, but we're gonna learn a very simple concept today. It's called the flat 2. Every single Slipknot riff uses the flat 2. So if this is the root of the key, then the regular old minor scale goes 1st degree, 2nd degree, 3rd degree, 4th degree, etc. But all we're gonna do is take this 2nd degree and flatten it. Boom, flat 2. I can't say that every single Slipknot riff uses it, but all of the big ones do. Death metal riffs are filthy with diminished scale sounds, and you'll probably notice that Slipknot riffs tend to live on these frets, which is also the first 5 notes of the half-whole diminished scale. Riff mileage. Slipknot knows how to get a ton of mileage out of a single riff. They are really good at changing how they play a riff to move the song along and to ramp up the feeling of the part. I also noticed that a lot of the time in their songs, the riff performance mirrors what the drums are doing. They'll play the riff more open or tighter with more palm muting, or they'll tremolo pick it depending on what the drums are doing. In the bridge of the song Disaster Piece, they play the same riff 5 different ways. More about how to write riffs, I am currently working on a riff writing course that really covers this concept of riff mileage, and you can sign up at the link in the description to get notified when that gets released. Groove! There is some debate about whether Slipknot qualifies as a nu metal band, and while they did get lumped in with the likes of Korn and Limp Bizkit and Mudvayne and all of those, they never quite fit stylistically. But what they did have in common with those bands is the big thing that set nu metal apart from all the metal that had come before, which is groove. Now, I am a lifelong fan of European power metal and stuff like that, but what all of that always lacked was groove and syncopation. What the nu metal era added was elements of hip hop and funk that sent the vest metal crowd into an absolute tizzy. They did not like it, but I thought it was a breath of fresh air. It also paved the way for a lot of groovier modern bands. Slipknot's riffs do a great job of combining syncopated groove and straightforward caveman bashing Like, for example, the duality riff, which I think is both very catchy and bouncy and also completely crushing. I think of syncopation as grounding versus floating. When you land on the beat, on the numbers, it's very grounding. And when you land on the off beats, the ands, the ups, it creates this sort of floating feeling, and combining the two of those can be extremely effective, and SLIPKNOT is really good at this. That riff doesn't have a ton of notes, but it is extremely rhythmically tricky because it straight up skips the first beat to syncopate the first note that you play, which really pulls the rug right from the get-go. It kind of makes you feel like you missed the first step on the stairs, you know what I mean? And then it lands very intentionally on the first beat of the second measure, which grounds it again after this sort of floating feeling, which I think is very exhilarating. The opening riff to Psychosocial is a great example of this sort of groovy, syncopated thing that I'm talking about, right? The pinch harmonic part of the riff is the thing that sticks out the most, and it's the most syncopated. It happens on the and of 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Of course, the drum part is also super bouncy. But then we get to the end of the riff, and we have this very, very straightforward 4 on the floor. Once again, using that sort of death metal chromatic tonality that I'm talking about, but it sort of grounds the whole thing at the end to sort of bring it back around. So even within this one riff, they're sort of straddling these two worlds. And then we get to the second riff of the song, which I think is the riff. I think it's the SLIPKNOT riff of all time. The drums get super simple. They just go do-ka, do-ka. And then there's almost this like meathead riff that still has a little bit of that catchy syncopation in it, but it's just straightforward crushing. That is easily my favorite SLIPKNOT riff. I think I like it because it combines this sort of caveman thing with this little syncopated twist in there that makes it just groovy enough. It could have been super boring. That hurts me to play. But with this just one little twist. And then it's an AAAB sort of structure where it's the same thing 3 times and then something different to end it so it doesn't feel quite so loopy. So if you're writing a riff and it feels like a little bit dead, you might want to try just taking one of the notes and scooting it off of the numbers and onto the ands. Even one little note that's syncopated can make the whole riff.
Keep it simple, stupid!
SLIPKNOT riffs are not complicated. They're extremely simple, catchy ideas that they repeat a lot, and they're really meaty. Because there's 9 dudes in the band. The riffs can't be too busy, or it just doesn't work. The riffs serve the song first and foremost. You might be hearing all these riffs and thinking, damn, they're all like pretty similar. And you might think that that would be a bad thing. But consider this. I'm here making a whole ass video about SLIPKNOT riffs because when you hear one, you immediately know that it's a SLIPKNOT riff. They have a very distinct style, and the way that you create a distinct style is by limiting yourself. If you just do everything in every song, I hate to break it to you, but you don't have a distinct style. You're just a mishmash. If few years back, I did a video called How Slipknot Writes a Song, in which I wrote a Slipknot style song. And the riff for that song went like this. So I hijacked the Slipknot sound using all of the things that I described here, and I was able to conjure up visions of Slipknot in your mind because they do a lot of the same things over and over again. Just like the same way they wear matching jumpsuits and scary masks on stage every single time, they limit themselves to certain musical moves that define their sound. If tomorrow they put out an EDM album that was all synths, you'd say, this doesn't sound like Slipknot. And you'd be right, because it's outside of the realm of style that they've limited themselves to. So don't be afraid to repeat yourself a lot and do the same thing over and over again, because that's what creates your unique style. Huge thanks to Fishman for sponsoring this video with the brand new Mick Thomson signature pickup set. You can grab a pair for yourself at the link in the description, and I'll see you maggots real soon.